All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the beginning of a new unit. This is going to be animal adaptations. So we are going to be discussing the ways that animals survive in their environment, animals and plants, all living things. Adaptations are simply changes in living things that help it to survive in its environment. So environment, of course, is anything that is around us. It is the weather, it's the food source, the water source, it is shelter, habitat that's available. So an adaptation is something within the living thing that helps it survive in its environment. All right, so we're going to focus on two types. We're going to look at physical and behavioral adaptation. So a physical adaptation is an adaptation in the body or structure of that living thing. So this could be, it can run the whole gamut of things. Camouflage is a really important adaptation. Camouflage is markings on skin or body or fur that helps that living thing survive. Plants camouflage, animals camouflage. So a camouflage can help a predator to stay hidden while it's hunting, so it increases its chance of catching a prey. Camouflage can help prey stay hidden from that animal, from that predator, so that it survives. So you got to eat to survive, and you got to not be eaten to survive. So it helps prey and predator. Another adaptation is body covering. So fish, for example, have very specialized body covering that keeps salt out. You know, the fish wants to get water in its lungs, for example, but it doesn't want to get salt in its lungs because that could cause damage. So animals that live, marine animals that live in salt water have very specially adapted body covering that pushes salt out versus absorbing it in. Humans, we have specialized skin covering. We have waterproof skin. Skin getting into our bloodstream could be dangerous. So we have specialized waterproof skin that keeps water out and keeps us alive. Melanin is another important adaptation. A lot of mammals have melanin. That is a skin pigment. It's what gives our skin color, but it is also what protects our skin cells from sun damage. So if we don't have enough melanin and we're out in the sun, we could get sunburned. Melanin is going to protect our skin from damaging sun rays. Body fat. So some animals are adapted to have more body fat. Every living thing has to have some food source to survive. Animals consume calories. Calories are what give us energy and make all of our functions work. So calories that we're not using right away are stored away in body fat. So having extra body fat helps us survive when there is less food available. For animals that live in cold regions, like a polar bear has really thick fat that keeps it warm. It's like putting on an extra layer of clothing so it stays warm in the Arctic winters, which are incredibly harsh. So body fat serves two purposes in that. Body temperature regulation is really important. We're warm-blooded animals. Humans are warm-blooded. Mammals are warm-blooded. Our body regulates our temperature. We sweat when we get hot. We shiver when we're cold. And that shivering moves our muscles and warms us up. Cold-blooded animals are adapted so that their body temperature is based on their environment. So if their environment's temperature changes, they simply adjust their body temperature and their functioning so that they don't become too hot or too cold. Senses. Our senses are highly adapted to the environment in which we live. For example, wolves. Wolves are have a very highly adapted sense of smell. They can track their prey over long distances. They can smell even little bits of an antelope or a rabbit or something that has come through an area, and they can track it over long distances to find their prey. Owls hunt at night. They're awake at night. They have to have very highly adapted sense of sight so that they can see a little mouse scurrying across the forest floor in the middle of the night when there's very little moonlight. So a prey animal could have very highly adapted sense of hearing so that they can hear something coming and get to cover very quickly. So senses can be very highly adapted. The second form of adaptation that we're going to talk about is behavioral. That's just an adaptation in the way a living thing behaves. There's two types of behavioral adaptations, instinct and learned behaviors. So we're going to discuss the difference in those. First, we're going to look at instinct. An instinct is a behavior that an animal or living thing is born knowing how to do. An example of this is bears. They hibernate. They hibernate in the wintertime when food is scarce. The water may be frozen, so they can't get fish. So the berry bushes aren't really producing, so they can't get berries. So they hibernate in the wintertime. They live off all of that stored body fat, so they have plenty of calories. And it takes a lot less energy to sleep all winter than it does to stay awake when it's really cold or hard to find food. Another instinct is migration. So animals, birds are the migrating animals that when the weather starts to turn cold, they'll move to a warmer region so that they can find food and water, they can have their babies, and then they move back. So that movement is migration, and migrating animals are born with that instinct that they know that it's time to go. Reproduction is probably the most important instinct that living things have. If you're not reproducing, if you're not making more little living things, then your species dies out. So that instinct of reproducing is critical for the survival of the whole species. Okay? We're also going to look at, let's see, learned behavior. That's a behavior that is taught. An example of that, lionesses teach their cubs to stalk their prey and hunt. So you would think that lions are vicious predators and they're born knowing how to hunt, but they don't. If a lion cub loses its mother at an early age, if the mother dies because of starvation or an attack from another animal or disease, then that baby won't learn how to hunt, and that baby will likely not survive into adulthood. And if they do, they'll probably be very weak and not very good at hunting. Grooming is another very important learned behavior. Animals teach their young how to stay clean. Staying clean prevents the spread of disease, it prevents infection, it makes them more attractive to a mate so that they can go back to that instinct of reproducing, but that has to be taught. You know, maybe you've seen had a dog that had puppies and that mom is constantly licking her babies and cleaning them, and eventually they're going to learn that they need to do that for themselves. So grooming is really important. So the difference here is physical is in their body, behavioral is in the way that they behave. And those are two really important categories there. And then instinct, they know from birth, and learned behavior, they learn over time. One last thing I'm going to touch on is a defense mechanism. A defense mechanism can be physical or it can be behavioral. And this is an adaptation that protects a living thing from predators. So examples here, skunks spray off really offensive smelling stinky spray so they don't seem very appetizing. Nobody wants to eat them. Possums play dead. You know, most animals are not going to eat something that's already died because it could have disease or infection or just be spoiled. And then porcupines have very sharp quills. So if you were to bite on it, it'd probably hurt. So they're both behavioral and they're physical. So a defense mechanism is just anything that helps an animal survive an attack from predator or keep predators away. So between now and next time I see you, think of instinctual or behavioral adaptations that haven't been mentioned, and try and think of a physical adaptation that would help a living thing survive, and we will discuss in class. See you later.